What is up, guys? Listen, I told y'all to have y'all's post notifications on, man. We always drop in special episodes at random times, man. We were holding on to this topic, and let me explain. A lot of people jumped on this topic with the Dion tweet and with everything going on, and just like gave their gut reaction and was like, it was either clowning Jackson State fans for wanting to go to the Power Five, or it was they're gonna make the playoffs, and neither's really realistic. Let's be honest. There's like a truth in the middle, and that's where we come in, guys. We know y'all we know y'all tune in for us for the truth, for the unbiased take here. So we did our research. So what we're going to do here is kind of lay out our idea of a realistic path for Jackson State and or other SWAC teams to make a move to the FBS level. And listen, we're not getting into the politics of it all. The money, some people saying it would destroy the SWAC. We're not into all that debate. We're talking strictly on the football field. We're not talking baseball. We're not talking basketball. We are talking college football and how it would affect the programs and what needs to happen on the gridiron to get these schools to the next level, if that's the path they want to take. And we're not even speculating on whether that's a real path, because I get it. There is a lot of rumors, Brandon, from Jackson State fans that in Dion's contract, there is a clause that he cannot leave JSU until he moves him out of the SWAC.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that's true. I'm not speculating on it, but if that's true, this is our realistic path where we put research in. We got y'all the facts on how it could happen. So let me start with this. So, Brandon, I want to start with the last few teams who have jumped to from the FCS level to the FBS level. Now, it is a little bit of a mixed bag. So there's been 12 teams, Brandon, that have jumped to the FBS level since 2008. Those include Western Kentucky, Texas State, UMass, University of Texas at San Antonio, South Alabama, Georgia State, Appalachian State, Georgia Southern, Old Dominion, Charlotte, Coastal Carolina, and Liberty. Those are your teams that have made this jump. Now, you heard a lot of different names there and a lot of different success patterns. So, Brandon, the realistic path for me for Jackson State would be somewhat like an Appalachian State or a Coastal Carolina. Now, you might be asking what that entails, and what that entails is you have to be one of the top-ranked FCS teams toward the end of your run. Appalachian State was dominating the SoCon. That was their FCS conference, was the SoCon. And I believe Coastal Carolina was part of the Big South, and then they were an FCS independent right before they joined the FBS, where they joined the Sun Belt. So I mentioned that, and I also want to say this. Listen, the odds of Jackson State jumping to the Power 5 from FCS is 0, guys. Listen, we're not hating. We're not hate. Listen, I would love to see it eventually, and it's great that the talk is happening. There has never been a team in the modern era to make a jump from FCS to Power 5 immediately. It just isn't going to happen due to funding, due to on-the-field talent, due to recruiting, due to a lot of political factors. So that's not happening. So, Brandon, what is your path, and what conference would you like to see Jackson State take?
So my path is very similar to yours, Zach. And I want to kind of address something before we get too deep into this, guys. We're not here to talk about, Jackson State can never do this, or Jackson State's going to win it all every single time that they, in any argument that we make, we're not going to go to one extreme or the other. We're looking at the realistic goal here of getting to the FBS, which it seems like a lot of Jackson State fans want. It seems like it's obviously what Deion Sanders wants. And so we're taking a look at that. Zach, I think you're right. I think that in order for them to make this jump to the FBS, we're going to have to see them improve on the football field a lot. And I'm not saying that they're terrible. Jackson State historically has been a really good team. I mean, they've had the Walter Paytons. I mean, they've had great success in the program, and it's a storied program. But here recently, I guess we haven't seen like the greatest on-field end result. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So I think that really needs to turn around, Zach. And there's a couple of prerequisites even for you to be in FBS teams. And I should have looked at this before, but I just thought about it before. I was like, could they even do it like if they wanted to? And I think they can. One of the biggest prerequisites is that you have to have 16 school sanctioned or school sponsored intercollegiate sports. I'm not sure how many Jackson State.
I believe they have 6. I'm pretty sure they meet that requirement.
Okay, so they meet that. They also have to play. Let's see, they have to play 60% of their contests against FBS schools. Which, if they made that jump, I figure they wouldn't be independent. I think they would have to make it into a conference, and I think the most realistic conference for them to be in off the bat would probably be the Sun Belt, maybe the Conference USA. I think just two realistic conferences for them to be in. Just, I mean, regionally, talent level, everything there. And Zach, what I really want to see out of Jackson State this season, and this is just kind of a gauge, when they play ULM, who is a member of the Sun Belt, I want to see Jackson State be competitive. You and I have already spoken on this, and I think they're going to beat ULM. ULM's not a very good team. I'd be disappointed if I were a Jackson State fan and they didn't beat ULM, to be completely honest. I think you feel the same way. So I don't know. That's kind of what's on my mind here, Zach. I don't think that it's going to be instant. I don't think that, Coach Prime tweeting at the Big 12 saying, hey, you got any openings. I don't think that's going to do anything. I don't think he was serious in that either. I mean, let's face it. He wasn't like 100% serious about that. Of course, he's going to throw it out there and kind of joke about it. That's kind of what he does. But I mean, they've got the prerequisites, I believe. Let's see, 15,000 attendance is what they have to.
They smash that.
I know they do.
I think they average over 40.
Right.
Last season where like the attendance wasn't cut due to COVID. And I believe they lead the FCS in attendance almost year in and year out at Jackson State.
That's awesome, man. Provide an average of at least 90% of the permissible maximum number of overall football grants in I don't know what that means. Something. I think they have to fill out their scholarships, basically, is what that is. Yeah. I think, you have to have this number of scholarships offered and accepted. And I don't think they're going to have an issue with that.
I think it's 85 at the FBS level, because I believe it's 65 when you jump down to FCS.
Is that right? Okay. That might have changed. I'm looking at an article from 6 years ago, so this could be totally different. And then they have to offer 200 athletic scholarships throughout all of their sports, which, if they're bringing in 40,000 fans to their football stadium every single game, I think they should be able to cover that just based off of football revenue alone.
And their women's basketball team just made the NCAA tournament, and their men's team is having a strong uptick. So I think they could do that. I think that would be something Jackson State could check off the list.
And now I think the biggest thing that we have to focus on here, Zach, yes, you've checked off the prerequisites. Let's say everything's good there. You say you get the success there. Say the success goes through the roof this upcoming season. Let's just, for instance, say Jackson State wins all of the games. They go 12-0, or what is it, 11-0? How many games they're playing this season?
12. I think it's 12.
Okay, so 12-0 this season. They win the SWAC. They go on, win the Celebration Bowl. They don't go to the playoffs because SWAC doesn't do that for some reason. There's one more thing, and we saw that, if you're watching this, you probably also watched the SEC. That's kind of what we cover the most. We saw Texas and Oklahoma and their jump to the SEC, or their bid to get an invitation, basically. The SEC had to vote on it. They had to have an invitation offered to them. That's the same deal with any conference in the FBS. These conferences have to invite you. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I want to join. I'm going to go join. I meet all these prerequisites. I'm just going to be a member of your conference in 5 years. It's not how it's going to work. You have to basically, show them that you're interested. They have to vote on it. Every single team in the conference has to vote on it and approve you. So there's a process here. It's not just as simple as saying, hey, I want to be part of it. There's a process. I think that Jackson State, with all the media attention they've been getting over the past season, has drawn a lot of interest. And I think that these conferences like the Sun Belt, or like the Conference USA, or please God, I'm hoping for this. I'm hoping for the super conference of those two combined. If we start seeing super conferences here in the coming years, they're going to have to hope that those teams see them at as high of a level to be like, yeah, I want them to be part of my conference. And I don't think that'll be an issue. I just think that Jackson State, the main thing is that they have to be more successful in football. I think that's the main thing. That's the main revenue driver. And we're going to have to see them put in work on the field. And Coach Prime's doing it. I mean, he's getting all these transfers. I think it's realistic, but I think we're going to have to wait a couple of years and kind of gauge the success as we go.
Yeah, I mean, the measuring stick. So, and I think Coach Prime also would like to see more than just Jackson State move up.
Right.
Now, I know we named the episode Jackson, what's the realistic path for Jackson State? And it's just because they're kind of at the forefront of this. And yes, like, Brandon said, we know Dion was just kind of creating some talk about it. But the first step is to create the conversation. Because if no one's having the conversation, they can never happen. And so, that's why we didn't want to take the emotional approach and come on here and scream on either side of the extreme. But, like you said, it has to, they meet all the prerequisites. But the key is, the talk of this Big 12 thing. And I mean, you have to, when you look at the FCS, I don't even think Jackson State would be on the top 5 list in terms of being invited. I mean, North Dakota State's won like 8 national titles in like 11 years. South Dakota State was at the national title. Sam Houston State just won a national title. Eastern Washington's in the playoffs every year. I mean, you have so many teams, in the FCS that could argue their way into it. Jacksonville State has been extremely successful. I mean, you have a lot of these schools, but the thing that they don't have, the thing that Jackson State has that some of those other schools don't have, is the hype and the fan base backing them. I think if you add everything together and make like a complete analysis of these teams, North Dakota State and Jackson State would be 2 of the biggest because they have the biggest support. They got the nicest stadiums. They're both going to have the nicer facilities. And I think those 2 are really primed to do something big. But, if you jump to the Sun Belt, if you're Jackson State, here's what I need to see. Like Brandon said, you're going to, and I get it if you don't beat ULM in year 1 or whatever, but I think you should.
Deal breaker.
You have to compete, though.
Yeah.
It needs to be a 1-score game. You need to be in the game. And then if you want to bring some of the SWAC with you, Alcorn has to compete with South Alabama, who is a Sun Belt member. FAMU has to compete with South Florida, who's an AAC team. Now, FAMU doesn't have to win because the AAC is kind of a step above the Sun Belt in terms of Group of 5 conferences. But you can't get blown out by USF. What you need to do is be competitive in these out-of-conference games. And this comes back to the conversation that I think every YouTube channel, every analyst for the SWAC has said. You have to play bigger out-of-conference games at the FCS level. Listen, Mississippi Valley State goes and plays McNeese State this year. They need to win that game to bring up the conference as a whole. Listen, when I know everyone hates making comparisons from the SWAC and the FCS to the Power 5. Well, if y'all want to move to the Power 5, y'all need to start comparing yourself to the Power 5. And so why do you think the SEC is looked upon as the dominant conference in the Power 5? It's because they win their non-conference games. Auburn goes out and beats the Washingtons and the Oregons who win the Pac-12. Alabama beats everyone they play by 50 in the non-conference. Georgia wins their non-conference. LSU wins their non-conference. Hell, Mississippi State and Ole Miss win their non-conference most of the time.
That's true.
And, yes, there's those occasional upsets, and that's great. But a majority of the time, the SEC is winning. The majority of the time, the Big Ten is winning. And that's what separates the good teams from the average teams. So at the FCS level, you need to win those McNeese State games. You need to – and I am begging Alabama State and Alabama A&M to go schedule Jacksonville State. Go schedule Samford. Those are your in-state opponents in the same football subdivision that you're playing in, and you don't play them.
Right.
Jacksonville State and Samford are in the playoffs every year. Go prove yourself against them. Jackson State, I mean, everybody go play other FCS opponents, and I get it. The argument's going to come. oh, they don't have the name recognitions, they don't have that. That's fine if the who cares what the fans care about? You know, if you're a Jackson State fan, you're going to go watch Jackson State regardless. That's fine. But guess what? When the Sun Belt or the CUSA, or 15 years down the line, when the Big 12's may be looking at you, they're going to say, "Oh, they're beating these good teams. Oh, they're beating these people," because the other FCS teams are the teams you're going to be competing against to move up to the next level.
Right.
Like, stop this argument of it doesn't matter because, oh, like, my friend, my neighbor doesn't know about Jacksonville. Like, who cares? Guess who knows about Jacksonville State? The Big 12.
Yeah.
Every analyst in the country. Like, if you got a football fan who doesn't know who Jacksonville State or North Dakota State is, they aren't a football fan. I'm just going to put it point blank.
God. I mean,
I'm being serious. Who doesn't? They're the best. They're some of the best FCS teams. They don't know who Sam Houston State is. What are you like? I don't care. Like, I get it, but you're gonna have to win FCS out of conference games. You're gonna have to win. You're gonna have to win and or compete on your out of conference FBS games. And if you want to move up, schedule those Sun Belt games. Yes, the money games against LSU and that's all fine and good. And it's really just a check. Let's be honest. And I've heard a lot of y'all say it's a check, so we can all agree it's a check. But guess what? When you schedule the ULMs, when you schedule the Texas States, when you schedule, who else do I want to call it? When you schedule the South Alabamas, when you schedule the Georgia States, you need to be competitive and or win some of those games to prove your worth. And the number one thing for Jackson State, if you want this move to be realistic, you have to win the SWAC this year. You have to win the SWAC multiple years. Like, it's all good. All the hype, all the attendance, yes, that's setting you up for this move. But the ultimate driver, and listen, I saw some comments on, our All Scripts live stream when he did a thing about this, and everyone's like, winning doesn't matter about moving up. What? Stop it. Do your homework, and then we could talk. Appalachian State didn't get a shot at the FBS because they weren't winning.
Right. Now they were winning. I mean, if you're Jackson State, and I know it's so much easier said than done, but Zach's right. You have to schedule these opponents. Go out and schedule Southern Miss. Southern Miss will play you. Southern Miss plays Austin Peay. Southern Miss plays, and Austin Peay's good. Don't get me wrong, but
Austin Peay was in the playoffs last year. I believe they won the OVC last year, didn't they?
I think so. But
they were in the championship. It was either them or Murray State. I'm blanking on that, but they played in the championship.
What I'm saying is that they'll play an FCS opponent, especially an in-state FCS opponent.
They played Alcorn 2 years ago and beat them.
So schedule them. Schedule Southeastern Louisiana. They're an FCS school, but they're a good FCS school, a really good FCS school, like in the playoffs FCS school. I'm not saying Jackson State isn't good. They are good.
Their quarterback just won the Walter Payton Award.
Well, Aquil should have, but yeah. I'll die on that hill.
But listen, I mean, there's no reason that Mississippi Valley State should be the only one with a tough FCS opponent.
Right.
Like why aren't you scheduling your in-state rivals at the FCS level? And that's fine. Listen, we're not here to debate the playoffs. So I hear your concerns, and I understand the money thing, and I understand the funding. Well, I'm not here to debate you on that, and I'm not here to argue with nobody in the comments about that. That's fine. We'll just leave that where it is. But what's keeping you from scheduling a home and home with North Dakota State, a home and home with Jacksonville State, a home and home with Stanford, a home and home with McNeese, a home and home with Southeastern Louisiana, a home and home with whoever, the Citadel and the SoCon? I mean, schedule somebody, and I get it. You got to go. I understand. Like, I get all the concerns about traveling, so the North Dakota State seem far away. But you're telling me Jackson State fans and the program can't afford to travel to Jacksonville State or to Alabama or Hattiesburg to Southern Miss or Texas to face Sam Houston State? There's options here. And, we're not – and listen, Jackson State is primed for a huge year. If they go undefeated and they win the SWAC like a lot of people are predicting them to, that's a huge first step for this path to the FBS to kind of express itself. But I think you're going to need to win the SWAC multiple years. You're going to need to prove you can beat some of these Sun Belt teams. beat some of these other top FCS teams, which will be candidates. Because the reason this is a realistic topic that we decided to cover on our show is because the AAC and a lot of these other conferences. So if the Big Ten takes some AAC teams, the ACC takes some the ACC takes some AAC teams, and vice versa, then guess who's going to be looking for some Sun Belt teams? The AAC. And guess what that's going to do? Open some spots in the Sun Belt. And guess who needs to be at the top of the list if you want this to happen? It's Jackson State and Alcorn. It's Jackson State and Southern. It's Jackson State and FAMU. Listen, the opportunities are going to be there, especially as these super conferences and conference expansions happen. We just kind of wanted to come down on this show, break down some realistic paths for Jackson State and other SWAC teams to the FBS. The Sun Belt, the CUSA are right there, man. They're right there for the taking. And if you perform in those conferences, the AAC is right there. And then you can be an Appalachian State, you can be a Cincinnati, where you're the first candidate when expansion comes along to jump to the Power Five. And that's our realistic path for Jackson State to move to the FBS. And just to be patient, man, nobody who has jumped from the FCS to the FBS level has won immediately. Right. Not Coastal Carolina, not Liberty, not South Alabama, nobody, not Appalachian State. It takes a year or two, maybe 3, to kind of catch up to that level of recruiting of football. And Coach Prime is the perfect guy to be the spokesperson. He can bring the hype, Brandon. He can bring the money. He's already shown he can fundraise at Jackson State. This would not be a realistic topic if it wasn't for Coach Prime, and I admit that. I give you that. But jumping to the Big 12 is unrealistic. It's never happened in the modern college football, and it's not going to start now. And what I think Jackson State needs to do is win on the field, continue showing they can recruit, schedule harder and bigger opponents on their schedule as the time goes on, because this is just Prime's, really his, first real year, Brandon. And so I get that he might not have had the chance yet, but down the road, I want to see them schedule more top FCS opponents, some Sun Belt teams. The more you play, the better. Be competitive, win those games, and this is a realistic path to the FBS. But guys, make sure to subscribe now, man. Y'all have been supporting us heavy. We appreciate y'all so much. We're finally getting some merch out. We had some problems with the distributor and messing up shirts, but they're being mailed out now. And we're also going to announce our 500 subscriber winners very soon, man. So we'll announce those and contact y'all very soon. But guys, 2-minute drill starts again tomorrow on Monday. We also have an interview with Chris Ola Duncan, former USF, former Sanford quarterback, now the quarterback for South Dakota State, man. Shout out to him. Back-to-back South Dakota State episodes, man. We had one Friday as well with Logan Bacchus, the linebacker leader for South Dakota State. And we got some big announcements about some special guests later on this week. But guys, for myself and Beat Up and the Blue Bloods, man, we are out for now.